Reactions are now trailing the conditions set for peace in Plateau State by the coalition of indigenous Fulani registered organizations following recent escalations of violence. While expressing concern over renewed hostilities between Fulani headers and local farming communities, the coalition's chairman, Garba Abdullahi Muhammed, outlined specific demands to restore peace and normalcy in the area. The conditions include immediate removal of the current military commander overseeing the area, unconditional release of all arrested and detained individuals, disclosure of the whereabouts of missing individuals resulting from attacks on their communities, among other requests. The coalition notes that only by meeting these conditions will peace and harmony be restored to the area. To speak on this is a security analyst and former Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice, Kaduna State, Mark Jacob. He joins me now from Abuja for some perspective on the violence in the North Central. Thank you for giving us your time. Beyond the conditions given by the Fulani coalition, what role do you think dialogue and reconciliation efforts can play in resolving the conflict between the Fulani headers and local farming communities in Plateau State?
First of all, it is important to clarify that there is no conflict between the herders and farmers in Plateau communities. What we have on the ground, which has been explained by the executive governor of Plateau State, is clearly a case of organized crime in the form of a genocide against an unarmed set of people, agrarian people who just know nothing besides going to their farms, taking care of their families, and living their lives quietly. And such people have continuously been rounded up in their homes with no confrontation at all against anybody. They are in their sleep. They'll be rounded up in their homes, killed, and their homes destroyed, their farmlands and food crops, even those harvested, destroyed. And of course, nobody is ever arrested for this carnage. So the situation on ground in the plateau, and generally in the Middle Belt, because this has spread even to the Benue area, there is no known conflict or agitation between the communities, where you find people being surrounded in their villages, in their homes, and killed. The narrative should be put correctly, that there is a set of militia that is wreaking havoc on communities, killing anyone and anything that moves, because even animals are not spared. And so we must say things the way they are. The media must also say the things that are real. There is no conflict. There is no fight between any one community against another.
We have a continuous system
of
sorry, sir. I just wanted to follow up on a thought you presented. Can people just go into communities without an agenda, killing a specific kind of, group of people? Because what we see most often is the reason people, I'm not justifying it or saying that is what is on the ground, but can people just go about without an agenda, killing their fellow human being?
That is what the government of Nigeria should explain. Those responsible for keeping the peace, the security agencies, the government agencies that are shouldered with the responsibility of investigating why things like this happen unabated for years. This has been going on. Village after village has come under attack. People have been killed in their hundreds, and villages have been taken over by those who are conducting the killings. And nothing is done. Nobody, we have no record of anybody that is undergoing trial. I shudder, and I think that this is an issue that has been looked as though there is nothing going on. When it happens in other locations, the government comes out clearly to say that this is a thing connected to Boko Haram or other things. But when it happens in the plateau or in the Middle Belt, the narrative becomes different. People are quick. In fact, government is quick to say that there is a conflict between communities, based on religion or tribal differences. Meanwhile, there is no record. Like the last two attacks that took more than 100 lives, there is no record that any of these communities, either in Bokos or any other village that has been attacked, there is no record that prior to the killings, there was any conflict between anyone and those people in those villages.
I mean, the information that...
Of disagreement, anything.
All right, sir. I mean, it will be best perhaps if the people in these affected communities are able to speak for themselves, but access to these places are shrouded because people, journalists in particular, cannot get to those communities for security reasons. But what we have on the ground, the reason we're having this conversation is the demand by the coalition. How does the coalition's demand for an independent panel of inquiry to investigate the incident and provide compensation align with existing justice and accountability mechanisms in Nigeria? Is this something you support? What is your thoughts on that?
It is important to also take note that the speaker on behalf of the coalition spoke from Kaduna. He is not resident in Plateau. He spoke from Kaduna, but of course, he owned up to the attacks by saying that the attacks will not end unless and until 1, 2, 3 conditions are fulfilled. And one wonders how on earth anybody can speak like that and nobody arrests him, nobody questions him to provide further information about the killings. Because apparently he's aware of those who did the killing, he's aware of the reasons why they did the killings, and he's even fighting on their behalf to say that all of them, any of them that is arrested should be released. And he's even saying that the military head of investigation or those in charge of security within that environment, the head of that team should be sacked or should be redeployed. And nobody is calling him to explain what he knows about the details of these attacks. Because the truth is, there are people on ground. I have visited the IDPs. I can talk authoritatively because I have seen those who have been killed, who have survived the killings.
All right, on the flip side of this conversation, sir, just to interject
into this narrative.
All right, just to ask the very obvious question, this demand is coming from Fulani, what's their title again? Coalition of Indigenous Fulani Registered Organization. And in your opening statement, you said that it is not the headless farmers thing, but we know that most of the Fulanis practice this header, they rear cattle and all of that. And then this demand that we have now, which you're also acknowledging, shows that something is off. So how do you collate that with your earlier comments that it has nothing to do, there is no header farmers clash going on?
No, certainly there is nothing like a header farmer clash, because those who came to kill did not even come with cattle. There is no evidence that anybody was grazing or was herding any cattle the night the people were killed or a day before. But people were rounded up while sleeping by armed militia. And because this man has owned up to the fight, to the killings, and has said that he's representing those who did the killing, there is no doubt that they were Fulani people, because he's representing Fulani people, and he has made it very clear that they are not going to allow peace to reign in the plateau until certain conditions are met.
Okay, quickly, I'm sorry we have less than a minute to wrap this up.
Behind the killing.
I hate to interrupt again, but we have less than a minute to wrap this up. What should be government's response to these kinds of demand, and what actions do you expect to see in the coming days to begin to find a way to address the situation?
Government has a duty to live up to its responsibility of securing the lives and properties of Nigerians. And once anybody indicates that he's responsible or he knows those responsible for killing any citizen of Nigeria, that person must be brought to book. And we are waiting to see what government agencies will do with the man who addressed the press on this issue. because that is a good lead. He will be able to provide information as to who did the killing, the reasons behind the actions of those killers, and what they want to achieve. But we have seen repeatedly, just like the governor said, that 64 communities have been run over and taken over by these people. And government ought to know, and government ought to explain how individuals or groups can move from village to village, ransack, kill, and take over villages, and nobody talks to them.
All right, Mark, we have to leave it there for now. That's all the time we have. Thank you. Thank you so much for sparing the time to speak with us.